Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into a story about how a moment of absolute personal crisis got completely reframed into a world-changing purpose, and it all came down to a single name. So, let's get into it. Our story really starts with this powerful quote. It actually comes from a mother's reflection after her son tragically died in a plane crash way back in 1947. You see, on a scrap of paper he'd mailed to her right before the flight, he'd unknowingly written on an ad that had one single haunting word on it. Why? It's that question, isn't it? The one so many of us ask when our own plans just fall apart. And that question, why, brings us right to our first section. We're going to look at that universal moment when a dream you've held onto so tightly suddenly becomes a nightmare. To really get this, we're going to look at the story of Joseph. I mean, here's a guy who had his future all mapped out. He and Mary were betrothed, which in their culture was just as serious as being married. And you can just imagine them, excitedly counting down the days. But then, boom. A discovery that flips his entire world upside down. Mary is pregnant, and he knows for a fact he is not the father. So this shocking news forces Joseph to make a truly impossible choice. And it's in this moment of crisis that we're going to see the real depths of his character. You know, they say a crisis doesn't build character, it just reveals it. And right here, Joseph is described as a just man. Now, that doesn't just mean he was a rule follower. In this context, it means he was a person of deep compassion and deep faith. And that character was put to the test immediately. He basically had three agonizing choices in front of him. One, he could publicly accuse Mary, which under the law could have gotten her killed. Two, he could quietly divorce her, just walk away, and leave her to face all the shame by herself. Or three, he could actually go through with the marriage and raise a child he knew wasn't his, taking all that public shame onto himself. In this is what's so telling about who he was. Even though he must have felt this incredible pain and sense of betrayal, his very first instinct was compassion. He decided he would quietly divorce her, all to protect Mary from public ruin and harm. But just as he made up his mind, an unexpected message arrived. And let me tell you, this message was about to change absolutely everything. So an angel appears to him in a dream and gives him a completely new explanation for what's happening. This wasn't a story of betrayal at all. What Joseph saw as his own personal nightmare was actually a miraculous work of God. And this brings us to the real heart of the story, the key to understanding this whole new reality. Well, it was hidden in plain sight. It was all contained within a single name. Okay, so to really get the full impact of this, we kind of have to shift how we think about names. Today, right, we pick names because we like how they sound or they're trendy, but back then, a name wasn't just some label. It was a declaration of who you were, your character, your whole destiny. Names meant something. The angel tells Joseph to name the child Jesus. Now, this was a pretty common name at the time, but its meaning was anything but. It comes from the Hebrew word Yeshua, which literally means Jehovah is salvation. Just think about that for a second. The name itself was the explanation. First off, that name declared his identity. Yeah, he had a common human name, but this was a completely uncommon person. This was God, in the flesh, actually living among people. Second, the name declared his intentions. His entire life's purpose was packed right into that definition. Salvation. He came, as it says, to save his people from their sins. That was his singular mission, the thing that would guide his whole life. Third, the name declared his impoverishment. Jesus was his human name, and it connected him directly to the human condition, with all its messiness, poverty, rejection, and that deep loneliness that can come with it. And finally, it declared his individuality. Look, there were a lot of boys named Jesus running around, but only this one would also be called Emmanuel, which means God with us. He wasn't just another person, he was completely unique. So here's the crucial part. This new understanding, all packed into one name, totally transformed Joseph's personal crisis into a profound divine purpose. One of the sources we looked at explains this whole idea of salvation with a really simple analogy. Imagine a man is trapped down in a deep pit. A legalist walks by, looks down, and just criticizes him. Then some other people come along, but they're just as unhelpful. The optimist tries to give him some hollow comparison, and the realist just tells him to give up. Nobody's actually doing anything to solve his problem.
But then, in this analogy, Jesus arrives, and his whole purpose isn't to judge from a safe distance or shout empty advice. It's to actually enter into the problem, to get down in the pit with the person and then lift him out.
And once Joseph got this new perspective, wow, he made a truly shocking decision. He went from planning a quiet escape to fully embracing God's plan. He married Mary, and he willingly took on all the community's judgment and shame because he didn't see a personal nightmare anymore. He saw a divine purpose. And all this really leaves us with a final thought. What first looks like the absolute worst thing that could ever happen might just be reframed by a change in perspective. Joseph's story kind of suggests that sometimes our own plans have to be shattered to make room for a much, much bigger one. So it makes you wonder, doesn't it? How does perspective change the meaning of a crisis in our own lives?